Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Okay, so have you ever noticed just how absolutely exhausting it is to hold on to a grudge? Like, it literally drains you. And it turns out there's a biological reason for that. Research shows that chronically holding on to anger actually spikes your cortisol levels and revs up your heart rate. It literally takes a physical toll on your body. So today we're going to dive deep into the profound science of prosocial behaviors to really unpack how we heal. Specifically, we're exploring two deeply interconnected concepts, forgiveness and spirituality. Now, these aren't just, abstract airy-fairy ideas. Positive psychology shows us that they are absolutely critical mechanisms for human strength, well-being, and real growth. We're going to look at the hard data and the frameworks that map out exactly how we can move forward from pain and find deeper meaning.
So, here is the roadmap for our journey today. 1. Defining true forgiveness. 2. The targets of forgiveness. 3. How to actually forgive. 4. The empty chair technique. And 5. Searching for the sacred. Don't worry, we're going to start with some deep academic definitions, but steer right into actionable, practical tools you can actually use. Let's get right into it.
Section 1. Defining true forgiveness. What does it really mean to forgive? Okay, let's dive into this and establish our psychological landscape.
To really anchor our premise today, we're turning to the clinical definition from researchers Wade and Worthington. They define true forgiveness as a two-part process. Now listen closely, because it's not just the passive reduction of vengeful and angry thoughts, right? It's not just saying, oh, I'm letting it go, or trying to ignore what happened. It is an active process that absolutely must be accompanied by an increase in some form of positive thoughts, feelings, and motives toward the offending person. I know, that is a really high bar, but this is crucial because it separates the true, hard-won psychological strength of forgiveness from all those everyday cliches we constantly hear. It requires a fundamental shift in our internal narrative.
Now, what's fascinating is the academic friction around this exact definition. Scholars actually debate the boundaries here. Take Robert Enright, for example. He's a leading scholar with a long track record in this field, and he believes the core mechanism is abandoning resentment to foster love. Because of that specific requirement of love, he argues the target of forgiveness can only be another human being. As he famously put it, how can you join in a loving community with a tornado, right? You just can't forgive a situation. But then, contrast that with Thompson at the top of the list. Thompson offers a highly inclusive definition, which is simply freeing yourself from a negative attachment. Under Thompson's model, you absolutely can forgive yourself, another person, or even an impersonal situation, like a natural disaster that destroyed your home. Meanwhile, Tanguy focuses on canceling the debt and giving up negative emotion, taking yourself out of the victim role entirely.
Section 2. The targets of forgiveness. Who are we actually forgiving? So, who exactly are the targets of this whole healing process?
If we look at those more inclusive models, we generally see three main targets. First, there's forgiving another person, like a partner who did you wrong or a friend who betrayed you. Down at the bottom, there's forgiving an impersonal situation, just like those psychotherapy cases where people actually needed to mentally forgive the tornadoes that devastated their towns so they could finally move on. But right there in the middle, and this is so crucial, we have forgiving oneself, releasing that deep, deep self-resentment. In psychology, it's widely recognized that the consequences of not forgiving yourself can often be far more severe and destructive than not forgiving someone else. It literally traps you in this awful cycle of self-punishment.
And this brilliantly illustrates exactly why self-forgiveness can be so incredibly difficult. It really all comes down to the critical psychological distinction between shame and guilt. On the left side, we have shame. Shame looks in a mirror and says, I am a bad person. It is this all-encompassing view where you just feel completely powerless and worthless. You feel like you're fundamentally broken and you can't fix it. But on the flip side, we have guilt. Guilt says, I did a bad thing. See the difference? It is situation-specific remorse. And because it's specific to an action, it warrants a reparative action. You can confess, you can apologize, you can make amends. So, to actually forgive yourself, you have to drag your mindset out of that heavy, paralyzing shame and shift it into actionable guilt.
Section 3. How to actually forgive. Moving from theory to practice. Let's pivot now, because I promised you some concrete steps you can actually use in your own life. So, how do we actually do it? Well, Everett Worthington's REACH model gives us a fantastic, concrete roadmap for forgiving another person. It starts with R, recall the hurt. You have to recall the nature of the injury without hiding from it. From there, we move briskly to E, promote empathy. This is trying to understand the human frailty involved in what happened. Next up is A, altruistically give the gift of forgiveness. And it is a gift, not something the other person necessarily earned. Then C, commit verbally to forgive. Say it out loud, make it real. And finally, H, hold on to that forgiveness. Because let's be real, the anger will inevitably try to flare back up. Healing is never perfectly linear, right? But this systematic path helps you truly repair a bond.
Now, alongside interpersonal forgiveness, we also have to cultivate positive cognition in our own minds. And we can do that using the AIM model. First, attention, consciously directing your attention to see the positive and the beauty around you. Second, interpretation, actively managing your interpretation of events so you're not just putting a negative spin on everything by default. And third, memory, protecting your memory by practicing savoring the good moments rather than endlessly ruminating on the bad ones. Attention, interpretation, memory. This triad is a real game changer. It represents a critical shift from a mindset stuck in negative rumination to one capable of positive savoring and actual healing.
Section 4. The Empty Chair Technique, a personal mini-experiment. Let's look at a fascinating, highly visual exercise derived from Gestalt therapy. Okay, I want you to slow down for a second and just try to imagine this with me. Imagine pulling up a physical chair in an empty room. If the person you need to forgive is unreachable, maybe they passed away, or you just can't contact them for whatever reason, or hey, even if that person is you sit down facing that empty chair. You vividly imagine them sitting right there, and you finally say all the things you never got to say out loud. This exercise is so profound because it completely externalizes the pain. And if you're using it for self-forgiveness, you mentally put yourself in that chair. You address the part of you that caused the personal harm. It allows you to process that incredibly heavy emotion completely outside of your own head.
Now, if speaking out loud to an empty chair feels, a little too theatrical for you, there is a wonderful alternative. You can write a letter. Literally, grab a pen and some paper and write a letter to yourself. Acknowledge what happened, take full responsibility for the bad act, and explicitly grant yourself the permission to let it go. Actually, scratch that. Don't just write it, mail it. Put a stamp on it and mail it to yourself. The physical act of writing, sending, and receiving allows you to process the guilt, close that chapter, and finally move forward with life's tasks. It's incredibly empowering and all about facilitating your personal growth.
Section 5. Searching for the Sacred, Broadening the Lens to Spirituality. Now we're going to transition to the final act of our explainer and broaden the lens from interpersonal healing to the universal search for meaning.
While healing from specific transgressions is absolutely vital, we can also look at this from a much wider perspective. But first, we need to clearly define the boundary between religion and spirituality, at least how they're used in psychological research. Religion refers to searching for the sacred in an organized fashion. Things that are highly measurable, right, like the frequency of prayers or attending religious services. Spirituality, however, according to researcher Kenneth Pargaman, is a deeply personal, universally accessible state of mind. It's a process of meaning-making that can touch your work, your relationships, your general philosophy of living, or whatever your personal concept of a higher power might be. So the key here is you do not have to be religious to be highly spiritual.
The VI Institute on Character classifies it perfectly. They say, as a character strength, spirituality involves the belief that there is a dimension to life that is beyond human understanding. Now, because spirituality is often considered this kind of fuzzy, hard-to-measure construct, it has historically been super under-researched. But in recent years, positive psychologists have discovered something incredible. This deep understanding of ourselves and our search for the sacred drastically enhances our well-being, for sure. It provides profound purpose and meaning that actually acts as a massive buffer against life's hardest moments.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how Dr. Jonathan Haidt takes that fuzzy, abstract concept of spirituality and gives us a highly accessible, totally practical checklist to actually build our spiritual strength. Just look at how actionable these are. You could take just 5 minutes a day to relax and think about your life's purpose. Take another 5 minutes to consider how you can improve your local community. You could read a spiritual book, explore different belief systems, or spend a few minutes meditating. Or, hey, simply invest in some optimistic quotes or affirmations and read a few every morning. The big takeaway here, spirituality isn't just an innate talent. It's a muscle. And it's a muscle you can actively build with just a few intentional minutes every single day. And that brings us to the end of our journey today. We have covered a ton of ground together. From the complex psychology of forgiveness and the vital difference between shame and guilt, to the concrete steps for repairing relationships and the powerful, meaning-making force of spirituality. So I want to leave you with this provocative thought to carry with you. Who do you need to forgive today, even if that person is yourself? Or where will you begin your intentional search for the sacred? The tools for healing and meaning are literally right in your hands. Thank you so much for joining me in this explainer. Keep seeking that purpose, and I'll see you next time.